So we'll give you a look at some of the frames that are getting made up right now for the many access ports into the many tanks that we've got, fuel tanks, diesel fuel tanks, and water tanks. So these will be lids. This is 6mm aluminum, and this will all have bolt holes in it for getting bolted down with a gasket to these kind of frames. So you'll start to see them being installed on the boat, but this is going to go over top of here. This big frame, this 25mm thick frame, is what gets welded to the actual tank tops. The tank tops are about the same thickness as this plate here. So we weld this onto the tank top frame, and that has bolt holes in it. A gasket goes between these two things, and they get bolted down to seal all the water and the fuel inside of there. And then the other new item under construction these days is the tubing for the arch that goes in on the boat. You've probably seen that on some of the renderings. So this thick-walled aluminum tubing is getting put together. This will be all TIG welded, all of these joints in here to put this together in a very strong fashion. We'll show you more later and explain the details of it, but this arm and set of fittings up here is part of a very cool system Dennis designed up for being able to fold this mast down, and as it folds down, take the bimini roof of the overtop of the sky bridge down with it. And we would do that for doing maybe the canals in Europe, or some places that we wanted to get under a lower bridge than we can get under, and just give us a little more options that way. And while we're here, we'll show you these. These are the what will become the stanchions on the boat, where the lifelines go through. So each of these tubes will have the aluminum tube going through it for having the Dyneema lifelines. So there'll be 4, I think we put in. I can't remember whether we decided on 3 or 4. Anyways, there'll be a set of lines, lifelines that go along here. The tops of them will get capped with a spherical cap, so it's nice on your hands, and that these will then get mounted in tube how do I describe them? Sockets that are going to be welded into the hull. So this part here, where my hand is, will be another tube that is part of the hull and gets fitted into there, bolted up with a nylon bushing in between the two of them, and then these things become the stanchions for all of the lifelines around the boat. Very, very strong and sturdy, 6mm thick aluminum, so it's a very stiff tubing, and it just keeps us away from having to have any stainless on the boat, hopefully. Much easier maintenance and easier to work on, and very strong. I had some other shots earlier on of the work going on with our skeg that holds the prop shaft as its primary purpose in there, and keeps everything protected. So you can see this is all getting the finish welds here now pretty much all on and built up. As I said in the other video, this bottom under area of the hull below the waterline is the only part of the boat that will have any paint on it. So we get the benefit of being able to use filler in here and make these fillets and rounds here all very smooth for both hydrofoil type of hydrodynamics of the water flow over top of them, as well as making it easier for Christine and I to clean when we're scraping the boat and keeping the hull nice and smooth and fast underneath here. These edges will all get ground down as well and fared to not quite a knife point, but nice and sharp. This feed of water going into the prop, of course, which is sitting out about here, is nice and smooth and uninterrupted. And you can see that Sezgin's now got all of this welding completed, so that all of the welding for the end of the prop tunnel is all completed now, and that pretty much wraps up the work down here, other than, of course, finishing it up and grinding it smooth and filling it and that kind of stuff. But let's take you up the ladder over here, and we'll go up and take a look around the swim step and the engine room and see what's up top on the deck. So more welding's been finished here on the aft end of the transom, the stern of the boat, so that's all in place. Needs to be, of course, ground down and smoothed out, but the welding is all done. If you've been following the blog for a while, you'll recognize that we're on the swim platform at the very aft end of the boat, and the framing and plating for this plinth and entryway into the workshop is all tacked up in place now. Still needs to be finish welded, but that'll happen later this week probably. It's Wednesday right now, October the 7th, and November the 7th, sorry. And the temporary framing is all in place now for the cantilevered roof section over the aft deck, as you can see there, just to make sure it's all exactly lined up. You can see that they've got flat bars that they've tacked in place to hold that roof plating absolutely flat as they finish up the welding on the inside and a bit more framing for that. And then all of those come off and are completely clear here and out of the way. And then this side of the boat here on the aft deck is going to be for the tender, where it fits pretty much all the way from this aft end here to the front. This is actually about 6 meters. The boat, we think, the tender, we're just doing the design work on that right now, will probably be about 5 meters long. And we'll show you that as that starts happening. If we step here into the workshop and engine room area, you can see that the engine room walls, the enclosure walls, are up now. They've been there for a while, and not a lot of change since you've seen this before, other than the fact that this too has been getting Sezgin's great welding skills to work, laying down all of the welds that you can see here. This We've stepped through that doorway there off the swim step or swim platform and into what will be mostly the largest area anyways for my workshop. So this will have flooring over top of it to give me a flat space to work on. I've still got lots of headroom, full height standing headroom in here. There'll be a workbench all along this side, all the way down this corridor here that will take you to next up into the guest cabin. But as they say, all of this area over in here will be a workbench. We've got this shelf here that's primarily for the steering cylinders and where the rudder post comes up through, and then I'll pick up another workbench as we come down that far side there. So lots of great surfaces for either installing machinery on or for me to work on. And then we have our engine room enclosure that you've been reading some of the write-ups and discussions about. It's a bit different. We've decided to have a very dedicated engine room, and about the only thing that's going in here is the Gardner engine, and of course the Nogva CBP servo box goes in here as well. And then we keep this room dedicated to those two pieces of equipment only. They're the only things that are getting the heat and the noise and the vibration from all of that, and then everything else goes outside here, water maker, boilers, electrical items, that kind of stuff, so that they don't start suffering from the heat of the engine, and that we've got a very big spacious engine room to work on and be all nice and safe for the equipment inside of there. Change since the last time you were here probably on the tour was to see all of these holes now being cut into the tanks. So as you might recall, the tanks had their tops welded on. They were all pressure tested to make sure that they all had no leaks in them, and any that got found were fixed. And then we are now ready for installing those flanges that you saw a few minutes earlier in the video onto these holes here, and these are all the inspection ports, so that if we ever had a problem, we needed to get access to these tanks, we needed to clean them. You'll remember from previous months that these have all got the baffles inside of them, so that's why you need quite a few multiple different spots. Obviously the lowest place or the deepest place in the tanks is along this keel center line here, so we make sure that we have holes for me to access with my hands or with machinery, and to either clean stuff out if you ever did get a problem, just to inspect it, make sure they're staying clean, and otherwise have access to that. And we'll go climbing up to these stairs here that will take us up into the super salon. So we don't have the bottom 4 stairs or 3 stairs yet in place while we're busy doing the tanks down there. But you can see how the steps kind of work out with this area. And then not a whole lot of changes since the last time you were up here. The window frames have all been completed all the way around, and they're tacked in. I'll take you out on the front deck again, and you can see those a little bit better. And up ahead here in the master cabin, they're getting ready to start doing the same thing, which is to cut the access ports into these tanks. They've all now been welded up. They've been pressure tested, and everything passes. The tanks forward there are reserve ballast tanks for us to be able to put water in and move some of the weight of the boat forward if we want to get a bit more of a bow down kind of position in some waves and some weather. So those will soon have tank tops put on top of them as well, and then this room will be ready for having its access ports put in place. And then one more view, I can never get enough of it, is looking forward out over the bow and just imagining a time when there's going to be nice blue water out there. Out on the aft deck here, they're just using this area to do the welding up of these flanges for the access ports into the tanks you've been seeing. So this is what they look like when they're getting prepped for getting welded up. They're done in 2 pieces, if you're wondering, so we can just get a lot more out of a single plate of aluminum. When we nest these things all together, you can imagine if we did it as a single piece, then you would be wasting all of this stuff inside of the middle here and wouldn't get anywhere near the efficiency out of the use of the aluminum. So you cut them in half like this, fit them all nice and closely together, nested together, so you get the maximum amount of pieces out of the sheet of aluminum, and then they get welded together here into a single piece again and flattened out. And then the little X's that the CNC machine marks in for us are where another CNC machine will take over and put all the holes that will be threaded for bolting the lids down. So that's what this area is having happen here. You can see more welding being finished up. This is all the finished welding now on the roof. There's cantilever roof assembly that sticks out over the aft deck here. Here's a shot for you of what it's going to look like with waves racing by us, and all of that covered in beautiful glass going down the salon here. And then here I'll just take you on a walk quickly up to the front deck, and you can have a bit of a sense of what it's going to be like. Up on here, this will all be a handrail, piped handrail, so it would be nice and safe for you to grab on here. And those stanchions, those lifelines we talked about, that goes, of course, all along the deck here from stem to stern. So you've got great safety and lots of stuff to hold on to when the boat's in motion. And then if I look down here, you can see that the addition this week is combing getting tacked on in place there. It's ready for Sezgin to come and do the finished welding, and that gave, as I've described to you before, this nice ability of, if we took a big wave over the bow, it could come back along the deck here as it might do. Really big stuff we'd be talking about here, so it wouldn't happen too often. But if we did take a big wave, then this wall of water comes across. It's now going to get deflected, starts to lose some of its energy, goes up the negative sloped window here, and then comes and gets turned back around. And then we've got these vents. Those will have demister grills on them to keep the humidity out of the air a bit and to keep any seawater out, and that supplies some of the ventilation of fresh air into the super salon. And this is that big, huge ventilation area when the solar panels that are on a rack in here get hinged up along that edge there, and when those solar panels get stood up when we're at anchor, this becomes this great chute or a funnel to direct the air up into there. Another demister grill goes across there, the air goes down, and then it goes through those big eyeball vents I just told you about before. And we can't see it too well from here, but up on top would be where you'd be standing and looking out of the sky bridge.